Other things to consider. You do have to motivate people to do this because it's always at the end of a long list of things to do, isn't it? Sometimes people are flattered by the cachet of having a big name talking to them peer-to-peer on data, on information or disease states. And this is an example of that. Now, as I mentioned earlier, what we've done here is created a film of a package. So I will first of all click and let it go through and tell you what you're looking at. And then Daniel will do the same thing again, which will give you a chance to really see what's going on here. Okay. So if you watch this little thing here, this was delivered on CD. It was a real live face-to-face investigator meeting. Many people were invited, few turned up.
Talk about me for the last 12, 13 years. I started working on angiogenesis, or especially anti-angiogenesis, in 1992 as a second year hematology fellow.
So this is the academic cachet. This is a guy who's flown over from the west coast of the States at enormous expense to speak to what should have been 600 people and was rather closer to 6 in the event. So we filmed it and recorded it and then built it into a CD format with 2 viewing screens, one film of the presenter and his images. Then, as you'll see here, the volume is adjustable, and on the left-hand side you can move around as well. The whole presentation is indexed, and you can go back to a main menu also. So this means that discs of this presentation could be sent out to everyone who should have been there but were not there. So they had the opportunity to see this. Plus we had another series of CDs from the medical advisor and lead CRA and addressed nursing and pharmacy issues. So that whole pack was sent out and they were able to go through that and complete it. Now, there's an awful lot to see in these things, so we'll run that again.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Okay, as Jane mentioned, this was a disk version, so I thought recording it rather than swapping disks and putting in username and passwords, this would be the best way of demonstrating it. We usually like to start off with a welcome screen. It just lets people know who's actually talking and what the content covers. We have various other options like resources, question and answer, implying some of the hybrid theories that Jane spoke about, where a user can fire off a question to the doctor or the speaker, and they can get a response back. And speaker biographies and other sources as well.
I should mention that this is actually a film of the screen that Daniel's had to lift lots of logos and keywords off. So actually it runs very smoothly on the CD, but has been seriously fiddled about with, hasn't it?
So
So the swap screen function could be replaced with something like full screen. As you see, most web videos like YouTube use quite often. It's better to see things up and in big, and could be substituted with the slides in a smaller lower right-hand corner for ease of viewing. I think video approach works a lot better than having to sit going through so much text and so much data that you normally get issued with. Play pause functionality, much the same as a VCR or DVD player would work. Slide to quickly navigate to any point, especially if you left off, you get called into a meeting and you need to come straight back in. You can always navigate directly to where you left off. And back to the main menu.
We've touched on accreditation certification already. We would always test at the end of modules, and that's particularly helpful within GCP because, of course, we've already said that a lot of these key investigators are running on a number of different studies and are very well versed in GCP, and the last thing that they want to do is to spend yet another half day going over very familiar material. This approach does allow them to go into a study-specific quiz and to complete a series of questions there that you can attribute a pass mark to. And if they pass that, they can be deemed to actually be adequately trained in GCP, to be fully informed. And that then gives you an opt-out of some GCP training that I know some of the investigators find very wearing when they do it over and over again. There are requirements in terms of electronic signatures and tracking of information, so it's very important to be mindful of that, particularly if you're going to let your auditors and inspectors into your sites to demonstrate that you have appropriately trained your staff. And that testing, of course, does acknowledge previous learning as well as allowing opt-in and opt-out of various modules. This is our next example. This is GCP training that we did for a client who's now replaced with client logo. And that will be a very familiar face to many of you. That's Joan Peru, who is the subject matter expert for us on this particular project. So down here, you'll see there's various functions: view your certificates, amend your details, help, etc. This is actually running live now for a major organisation worldwide. And they're training site staff using this approach. This, unlike Professor Kabinavar that you just saw earlier, is what we think of as audio. So it's traditional visuals.
I'd like to talk about
with commentary.
Practice regulation. And in doing so, I'd like particularly to look at these questions. What is it?
And as you can see, that's now been paused and restarted.
Why do we need it? How do we implement it? And who will actually enforce it?
So you get the feeling. It's visuals with commentary over the top. And then this film will then go on to show you how you can change this, change the volume, change the setting, go back, go forward, and you will actually see quick navigation where you can move around inside the module.
FDA issued proposals.
And you can also look at a slide preview panel, and that will be shown shortly. This is very inexpensive, and it's very popular. I'm not sure I entirely understand why it's so popular, but it works. And the bandwidth demands are very limited. It gets streamed all over the world, and people find it easy to work with. From our point of view, though, it's not very exciting to produce, is it? No. So there you see you can preview what's coming up. And with a lot of our clinical modules, there are lots of lovely visuals of clinical conditions, therapies, etc. GCP is a little more text-heavy often.
If someone does sort of like flick from one screen to another, can you track that?
Yes.
Yeah. So you would know that they've seen all of them. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes. And you can stop them doing that. You can enforce. Okay. So this is an example of a quiz also. So that shows how you go in, get tested on the material, and then come back out to go into another module.